All right, all right. Good morning. We're here at another time. It is Coffee and Chat with Rev Bruce. I'm back once again. Glad to be here and definitely glad to share. I am excited today. Back to having guests. Our guests will be none other than uh, David Rivera. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and set this thing up, and he'll be in here a little later, but I'm going to set this thing up and get it rolling. And so, as I mentioned, David Rivera will be here. He will serve as our guest for today, talking a little bit about his life experience, his journey. And so, definitely feel free to offer some questions in the chat, the comments. And as always, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe, check out further videos on the YouTube channel. And this is what happens Saturday by Saturday, even though we're at a different time. You know what? Changing the time is worth it for, you know, guests and everything, as long as it can work out for you and you can accommodate it. So definitely a consideration, and I'm glad to do it and bring them on. So another thing that's going on, just keep in mind, later on today, about 12:30 my time, I'll be doing a little run through of our Giving Thanks by Giving Back campaign, our Giving Thanks by Giving Back campaign, which is happening November 22nd through 29th. But today, I'm just going to do a run through for some folks, give them some information, and you want to check that out if you're interested in doing something within the ministry this holiday season, especially, Black Friday coming up, things like that. And so as we get set for, David Rivera to come in, definitely consider, when we talk about community, consider how you make a difference and make an impact. And when you hear what he has to say in our interview today and get a little bit more information about this Giving Thanks by Giving Back campaign, you'll definitely want to check out what we got going on. If you've tuned into our Live at Lunch Bible study with Pastor Powell, you'll see that Pastor Powell and Christ Temple have already started. They're doing a hard job of getting some things done. And some churches, that's just what they do. Some churches, that's just what they get with their community. And some community organizations do that. And we as individuals, we just need to do that. We need to not depend on government programs so much as we can depend on the goodwill of our fellow man. And so trust me today that this session this afternoon will be just a little something to whet your appetite for the week of works that we'll be doing for Giving Thanks by Giving Back. And so, like I mentioned, David Rivera will be joining us shortly. And this is a time where we are getting ready to truly be grateful. And so when we say that, I think about something that Henry David Thoreau said: I am grateful for what I am and have, and my thanksgiving is perpetual. And so when we think about that, look at what Henry David Thoreau is saying. It's something that we can give all the time. That Thanksgiving, we can give it all the time, and we can be involved in being grateful every day, every moment, and not for just what we have, but who we are. And think about that. Our experiences shape us. Our lives are made this way. And so God bless it. We are definitely in a position to be stronger than we've been before. And we can do that simply by using these devices. We're social distancing. We're trying to, maintain some things, but here we are once again. We're trying to get through. I know in California, we're trying to get through this purple tier and try to work our way back to less restrictive conditions, but we've got to do our part. We've got to do our part. And hey, even though it's happening now, what can we do to change it? What can we do to make it better? And so keep that in mind. You know what I mean? Keep that in mind. And while we wait for Dr. Rivera, I just want to share a few things with you. This is just real simple, keeping it going and keeping it live. I actually read this, and it struck me this morning. The rich young ruler, and it talks about getting through the eye of a needle. And one of the things that is said is the rich young ruler went to Jesus. He said, "What do I need to do to inherit this kingdom?" And Jesus told him, "Hey, you know what? This is what you need to do. You need to follow these commandments." He said, "I've done that all since my youth. What else I need to do?" Jesus says, "Hey, sell everything you got, take the profits, give it to the poor, and then hook up and follow me." And homeboy walked away sad. He was distraught. This was not what he thought Jesus was going to tell him to do. And so Jesus said, "Hey, how hard it is for the wealthy to enter the kingdom of God." And he pointed out, and he said, "It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." And his disciples were thrown off by it. And they said, "Well, how's somebody supposed to get saved?" And he said, "With people it is impossible, but not with God, for all things are possible with God." And Peter turns around and says, Look, Lord, we've left everything and followed you." And Jesus responds and says, "Truly I say to you, there is no one who has left house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or farms for my sake and for the gospel's sake, but that he will receive 100 times as much now in the present age, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and farms, along with persecutions, and in the age to come, eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last will be first." I mean, that's a mouthful. And part of what we're seeing is that the eye of the needle is the part that folks are trying to squeeze through. The eye of the needle is the part that people are trying to get through. And when we talk about that eye of the needle, to get a camel through the eye of the needle is seemingly impossible. And so I read this book. I read this book called Traveling Light, Max Lucado, pastor out of Texas. Been reading his books for ages, and Traveling Light is one of his books that just punched me in the face. It explored the promises that you can discover in Psalm 23, the psalm that it also helps the reader to recognize, hey, guess what? It's okay to leave your baggage behind. It's okay to dump your baggage. It's okay to not carry your baggage with you. Your baggage is going to eliminate of your opportunity, right? Put you in a bind sometimes, and so it's okay to not just leave it behind, but to even dump some of your baggage. You know what I mean? To get rid of it. And so make sure that you understand this, that when we have this baggage, right, this is definitely something that is killing us sometimes, and it's killing our opportunity. It's leaving us with little hope to go forward. Sometimes we're carrying that baggage of grief. We're carrying that baggage of regret. We're carrying that baggage of doubt. We're carrying that baggage that says, I'm not good enough, right? And so stop it for a minute. Stop allowing your past and even your present to hold you back from going forward into your future. This book was phenomenal for me. And it's, like I said, Traveling Light. And it brings me back to the same thing I said before about this rich young ruler. It says, not being able to get through the eye of a needle, not being able to get a camel through the eye of the needle, and that being the same dilemma that a rich person would have getting into heaven, leaving those riches and possessions behind. What do you need to leave alone and leave behind to go forward, to lighten your load, to allow you to experience what's your future differently? And I hope you take this to heart. I hope you take this with some understanding that your load being lightened could definitely help you today. You know, stop for a minute. Stop for a minute. Look at it. What's your baggage that's keeping you from going through the eye of the needle? What's your baggage? What it is? What is it? And identify it, own it, and then say, am I going to dump this? Or am I going to carry on and go forward? And what am I going to do with this baggage? Because I can't go too much further with it the way it is. You know, and so trust me, this is something that makes a difference. And so we want to make sure that as we go forward, you pick up the pieces where you left off and realize that you can go forward leaving some stuff behind. You may have to leave some relationships behind. You may have to do that in order to go forward and become more of who you are destined to be, as opposed to holding on and sticking with it lockstep, that it's going nowhere and it's not growing, and it's not growing you. It's not growing you as a person, and you're stuck. Like I said, there's not that much time left in 2020, but there's plenty of time to make a change. And so get rid of that baggage, dump that baggage, and see where the rest of this life can take you. I mean, it's a reality. We are in the midst of change, and the midst of that change is coming up here in 2020. You know, 2020 and its end. We recently lost Mr. Jeopardy, Alex Trebek. Just more indication of what's 2020 look like, as far as the number of losses that we've had. But in all that, things are still happening where people are making gains, where people are still getting ahead, and people are still, triumphing. We still have this election that's kind of being figured out. But I mean, look at it. Look at the amount of involvement people have had, the amount of conversations people have had around the political and social and economic realm of this whole society, this global perspective that people have had beyond someone just calling this pandemic and blaming it on, China. It's beyond that. And so here we go. We're in the middle of the middle of November, and we're nearing the end of the year. Let's get something done. Let's get something done in a big way. And so David Rivera is going to be coming in here, and I want to give you a little bit of insight into David Rivera. David Rivera is the president of Epiphany Prep Charter School. He is highly involved in the renewal of the charter school, recently submitting a petition for charter renewal. And I would have to say, from my experience of working with him, the man is always looking ahead, and changes, adaptations and movement, looking for what's best for the kids, what's best for the families. And so David Rivera is he is a champion for the cause and calling that's on his heart. And without further ado, here is Dr. David Rivera. What's going on, man?
Hey, Bruce, how you doing, buddy? The
All
Reverend.
right. Yeah, I was just giving a little introduction. Just the like I said, the champion you are, and so glad to have you on today, man. How's everything going?
Well, thanks. Great. It's a little bit of a crazy morning with soccer and vet appointments, but I couldn't wait to be on here. My kids are super excited, actually. They're in the next room. They're 8 years old, but they want to see this later. So they've been
Oh,
talking.
definitely. Yeah, definitely between soccer games, I know trying to squeeze it in before the purple tear takes over.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, and so I mentioned in the beginning about you being a champion for the causes that are near and dear to you, and so I know you had a childhood where you had parents who were highly involved community members, right?
Right.
And how did their community and nonprofit work influence your life choices later on?
It's funny that you bring this up because I joke with my parents about this all the time. My dad has this running joke. He wanted me to be a district attorney, right? And so he tells me, he always says, when are you going to get a real job? And I'm like, well, what'd you expect? I'm following in your footsteps. What do you think was going to happen, right? I mean, children, follow their parents and the lead and guidance and leadership of their parents. And so I was one of those kids that, during like organizing meetings and, my parents were involved with the Chicano Federation. They were involved with a lot of church groups. There's so many different groups they were involved with, and I was one of those kids that would play at their feet when I was 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and then I'd play with the other kids in the room while they were planning their activities. And I don't think they realized how kids hear. Kids were paying attention at that time. Even though they were playing, they heard the challenges that they were facing, and they heard the struggles that they were facing. And this is the early 70s. This is when there's always struggles, right? But this was, during I think one of the peaks. We were finishing up in the Vietnam War. There was a lot of tension going on in the country, and so just being able to see them and hear them and see them take that leadership role, I think was instrumental. I went through a 10 or 15 year path where I left that, right, and I had an epiphany in my early to mid 20s. And when I had my epiphany, I would always, there was about a year where I would reflect on the leadership of my parents and what they did. And I think eventually there was that point where everything just kind of clicked. And I said, I'm going to go in this direction. And I'm going to, change. I'm actually going to change the things that I was doing, because my story, Bruce, that I was involved in a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have been involved with.
Yeah, went to Notre Dame.
Hey, I just found out you were an Alabama fan. Is that true?
Come on, man. No. Lied to you, and they purposefully lied to you.
So I would bring it up on a show.
Yeah, I am a UCLA born Bruin, and I am a Bruin and Auburn fan. I love. Auburn. Yeah, so Bama, I don't roll with Bama, and I don't roll with the Tide. Yeah, man.
My brother-in-law went to Auburn, and so we're big Auburn fans. And a friend of mine who I played football with actually in high school was the head coach at UCLA. He was a big player in the late 80s too, Carl Durrell. So he's
man, yeah.
I haven't talked to him in probably 20 years. So my parents' influence, Bruce, was huge, and a lot of times it wasn't the words they were saying, but it was the actions that they were showing. And we know that, we know that actions speak very loudly. And so they had a huge impact in my life, even though I did veer from that for a while. It was always on my mind. And I always had that foundation, and I went back to that. So.
Yeah, and you studied law and
Mhm.
got involved with the real estate industry. And out of those two industries, what life lesson did you take from that period in your life?
My whole when I was younger, I played a lot of sports all the way through high school and early college. And um, so sports I felt really comfortable with. The academic life, I just didn't. I just didn't think that I was back in the day there was this clear distinction. If you played sports, that was your thing. And
Mm-hmm.
there were other kids that were the bookworms and kind of had that nerdy perspective. And so I didn't run with them. I just didn't, that wasn't my thing. And I didn't think, at the time when I was younger, the cool thing was playing sports. And so that was the big thing for us. And so I just wasn't focused on the academics. And what happened was I ended up quitting college. I had a football injury that was really bad when I was 20 years old. So I had gone to college for 2.5 years. I played football and baseball at the junior college level, and then at a small university up in Oregon. And I had the injury. I came home, and I wanted to keep that attention, right? And so
Mm.
I thought, well, I'm going to get into real estate. And I ended up being pretty successful pretty fast. And my work ethic was really, really strong. And so I worked graveyard as a security guard. In the daytime, I worked real estate. And so, really quickly, I did really well in the first 2 or 3 years. I started buying real estate. So by the time I was 25, I owned a few properties. And I think the lesson I learned there is that I could do something that wasn't sports related. That
Mm.
was the big learning lesson for me, is that sport wasn't everything. Because when you're a kid, it's everything, right? You want to be, the next, star baseball player, star football player, basketball or soccer or whatever it is. And for me, the big learning lesson was, wow, I can do something and have a successful life, have a successful career. I can teach people about real estate, how to invest, and I worked really hard to learn the business. But it was something outside of sports. It was like I was learning something bigger than my environment and my sphere, and I
Mm.
was growing, and I didn't really realize it in the time. But that gave me really a lot of the confidence to know that I could go back to school and get good grades, because after 2.5 years of college, I only had a 1.47 GPA. And
Wow.
and then I took this 4 year break, this 4.5 year break before I had my epiphany. And then I went back, and I had to go back to junior colleges. I went to like 4 or 5 junior colleges over a 6 month period to cram in a bunch of units so that I could actually go to a university. So I'm older now. I'm a little more mature. I'm like 25. So I completed 34 units in 6 months. And that's what got me into the University of San Diego. But I think it was that confidence in real estate that I just didn't have before. I had it in sports, but
Yeah.
but in other aspects of life, I just didn't think I could really excel. And so seeing that success in real estate, really, I thought, wow, well, if I could do this, I can go back to school. And I went back to school, and I was acing everything, getting really good grades, working hard. Again, that work ethic, you know,
Yeah.
hitting the books hard, and that's what helped me get into Notre Dame Law School. So it was really kind of like baby steps, success here, and then always working hard, always plugging through, always enduring through the learning periods to reach other little milestones. And all of a sudden, bam, I'm at Notre Dame Law School, a place I never thought I would end up, and graduating. So
Yeah. And John Maxwell talks about, he says, small successes lead to greater successes.
that's right.
And you mentioned something that a lot of people, some younger people and some older people, they cringe when they hear that. You said you were working real estate during the day and you had the graveyard job, right?
That's right.
And so a lot of people are not going to. Oh, I can't do that. I don't have enough time, and so that whole, like you said, work ethic to grind it out and said, hey, I'm going to do this for now, right? Because
Yeah.
I did that. I did that earlier. You know, I was working 2, 3 jobs, security, going to school,
Right.
and I still look back and say, I don't know when I had time to get even a C, more or less a
Right.
B in a class, but
Right. Right.
it but you were driven to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
thank God for that.
And one of the other things I learned in real estate, because in real estate, you have to establish a name for yourself. You have to go out and meet people. You have to go out and get a client. And then when you have a client, like let's say you're selling their house, it could be 30, 60 days before you sell their house, and you're not getting paid for this. You're getting paid goose egg, nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got another 30, 45, maybe a 60-day escrow. So even if you get a client, it's 3 or 4 months before you actually get paid. And when you get paid, it's a good amount. I mean, it's a nice chunk of change. But learning that patience, knowing that, okay, I'm struggling now. I'm working this graveyard shift. I remember down in Chula Vista, what's that lake down there? That construction, and not Otay Lakes, but I can't remember. Anyways, that big lake down in Chula Vista with all the housing, the new housing that went around it about 30 years ago, and now they're still building around it.
Oh,
I remember when that lake was being filled, thinking about, okay, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm working hard now, but I'm learning in real estate, and there's that prize at the end. It's you're preparing, you're planning, prepping, you're working hard, and there's that goal at the end. And that's what really, I think, prepped me for college life, for my life at the University of San Diego and the University of Notre Dame Law School. Was that patience, building patience, because as people, we intuitively we want things now, right? But that was another big learning lesson too, is just having patience, knowing that there's going to be something, a prize at the end of the road.
yeah. And so let's fast forward to your work with establishing charter schools in San Diego County. How did that come about?
I always knew. I said again, I had this epiphany experience. And it was on October 16th of 1993. And at the time, I was partying a lot. I was making 6 figures in real estate. I owned a bunch of real estate. I had a house in Mount Helix, but I just wasn't satisfied. I didn't really have this purpose. And like we talked about my parents before, I kept reflecting back on the life that my parents had.
Mm-hmm.
Supporting the community, really making a difference, having purpose and being impactful. And I didn't feel that I was doing that. And so, I was partying, I was making money, and I had this, just one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, I had this conversion experience, this epiphany. And it was through that I knew I needed to do something to give back. And and to really follow the leadership that my parents gave me as a kid. So the next day, after this epiphany experience, I literally quit work. I called my boss. I said, I'm never coming back in. I started going to junior college, and then eventually, USD and Notre Dame. But there was always a goal. The goal was always to start something or open something or do something that would have a major impact in the community. And so that's where the concept of, service and community came from. And it wasn't until after I graduated from Notre Dame Law School, I put together a group of my friends from USD and from ND, and we started having these weekly meetings for 2 or 3 hours at a time. And that group went from like 3 people to 5 people to 10 people. And we just started researching what are the biggest needs of the community. And everything kept going back to education, education, education.
Yes.
So, and so that's really where it came up. It was kind of a team effort where we all knew we wanted to do something, and education and opening schools was the concept of that, or was the end result of that.
All right, and I have to pry further, right? To peel back the layers. How did Waiting for Superman fit into the picture? How did that come in there?
Waiting for Superman. So I had assisted in the opening of about 4 or 5 schools. This is now 2010, 2011. I had assisted in the opening of a few schools. I had opened up one school, Nativity Prep Academy down in Southeast San Diego, that was
Yeah.
very successful. And I had really turned into more of kind of like a startup coach, helping entities. I helped some youth groups. I helped open up some youth groups. I helped a few churches at that time. So I kind of became more of a startup person. How do you take a conceptual? How do you go from concept to implementation?
Yeah.
So it's now 2010, and I saw a commercial for it on TV, or maybe it was a news show on it, and I thought, wow, that looked like that looks great. And so I contacted a friend of mine who's a philanthropist. He had been a close friend of mine, a traveling buddy. I knew him through USD. Super good guy. If anyone's watching this and you buy cars from Hohen Motors, those are good people. Those are really, really good philanthropic people. I hate to put in a commercial, but the whole family are just saints in my book. I mean, they're involved in so many different things. And so I was talking to him and I said, hey, there's this documentary that's coming out. Do you want to see it? And he said, yeah, we'll go and see it. So we went with our wives. I just gotten married. And so we all saw Waiting for Superman. And there's a part to this story that was unbeknownst to me at the time. So we're watching Waiting for Superman, and the impact of seeing children or parents who want a difference for their child.
Yeah.
And this is not a negative against standard public school education. Public school teachers and educators work really hard. It's just that not every model is a good fit for everybody. For some students, regular public school are better for them, and for other students, charter schools are better for them. And other students, private schools are better for them if they have the resources for it. So we're watching this, and there's students and families that are really struggling and long wait lists of charter schools, and they really want to get in there. And I just thought it was incredibly impactful to me, seeing the families who could not get into the charter schools, and it absolutely broke my heart. I am with this expertise that can help open up schools. And my mentor, who coached me up, a guy by the name of Brian Bennett, had passed away right around that time or a little bit earlier. And so I thought, man, I mean, I don't know if I can. This is opening up schools is a big challenge. You need partners that really know what they're doing, and you need resources to start up. Because people have to get paid, and it takes from thinking about a concept to actually opening up a school, on average, it takes 3 years. So it's a major undertaking. So at the end of watching Waiting for Superman, we're having dinner, and Bob Hohen asked me, he said, David, if you could do anything, what could you do? And I said, well, I'd like to take this model that I've been successful with, this extended year model that focuses on values, and take it to the charter school world. And so he wrote a big check right that night. He said, I'll support you in that. Let's do this. And I said earlier, there was a part to the story that was unbeknownst to me at the time. So the star of that movie, the person who coined the phrase "Waiting for Superman," is an individual that works in Harlem. Of course, the gentleman,
Jeff Canada,
and Dr. Canada, and he actually went to a small college in, I think it was in Maine.
Maine, yeah.
Yeah, Bowdoin, I think it's
Bowdoin. Yeah, I got a friend that played ball there that Jeff Canada handpicked to lead some programs at Harlem Children's Zone. Yeah, wow. Eric Bell, yeah. Bowdoin, of all places.
Well, listen to this. Yeah. It turns out that Bob Hohen, the person I was having dinner with that night, had not only gone to Bowdoin, but graduated the same year as Dr. Canada. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. I didn't even know that.
And so there was so what I didn't know when Bob was asking the question is he was already inspired. He was inspired by the movie Waiting for Superman. He was inspired by the families in Waiting for Superman. and he was inspired because there was this uh, uh, kind of like this voice inside him, that was connecting, because of Dr. Canada, that was connecting him, Bob, to the charter movement, at least in this initial stage. And so I thought, wow, you talk about forces, powers that be behind, playing a role and putting everything
Yeah.
together. I mean, I could just see God's hand in everything. And so it was really powerful for me to know that story later on, that Bob was already inspired. So there was just a natural connection there. So that's how the concept really started. Just wanting to make a bigger difference in the community. And
Yeah.
unbeknownst to me, Bob was already inspired and coming together for dinner, and him writing that initial check, which allowed us to really start up and move forward.
Well, David, I have to be honest with you. You couldn't have orchestrated that on your own
Yep.
any better than how it played out. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And I know from experience in nonprofit arena with Hohen. Hohen has been a major supporter to community and a lot of faith-based efforts. And so yeah, hats off to you both for watching that and taking that to heart and seeking to make a difference. And so yeah, go ahead.
My old coach used to say, no one's lucky. Lucky is when preparation meets opportunity, right? And I know he
Yeah.
was quoting someone else on that, but just being prepared, and then having that situation arise with that connection was just really, really amazing. That was a major moment in my life.
Yes, indeed. So do me a favor. Name one person who really acts as a sounding board for you and serves as a voice of reason for you. You mentioned Brian Bennett and his passing and his ability to mentor you earlier. Who do you have now that one that you can bounce ideas off and keep looking forward?
Yeah, the concept of having a mentor, really took hold back in around 2001, almost 20 years ago, when I was starting something up. There was a priest back east who started up the first nativity school, Father Jack Podsiadlo, just a really good guy. And I asked him, this was about a year before we opened up our first school, and I was still at that fundraising planning stage. And I said, Father Jack, tell me something I don't know right now. Tell me something that other people may not tell me. And he said, surround yourself by people smarter than you, more passionate than you, people that are willing to jump in the fray. And his point was that, you don't need to be the big dog, right? That's how this thing's going to start, and this isn't how it's going to go. You need highly trained, competent people surrounding you. So just keep sharing the story of it, and other people will see this as an opportunity, right? To either volunteer or join as a teacher or as a lead person. So at that point, I started looking for mentors, and there was one person that came up very quickly. Brian Bennett was one, but also the former principal, and then he eventually became president, Dr. Richard Kelly, over at Uni High School. Uni no longer exists. It was across the street from the University of San Diego. It became Cathedral High School. It moved over to Carmel Valley. But the principal there was just fantastic. And I wrote, when I first started my first school, I sent out about 50 letters. He was really the only person that responded initially, and he responded quickly. So when he responded, I jumped on it. I called him. I met with him. And one of the biggest learning lessons I'll ever have, my first meeting with him, I'm walking onto the Uni campus. I'm walking to the parking lot, and there's a landscaper right there. And I couldn't find the office, and I asked him where the office was, and he said, "Oh, you just go down this path. There's a door right there." So I went down that path. I walked into the principal's. He was principal at the time. Walked into the principal's office, and his assistant said, "Oh, you were just talking to Dr. Kelly. He's over on the pathway." So I look over and I said, "Well, there's the landscaper there, but I don't see anyone else." She goes, "Yeah, that's Dr. Kelly." So I went over there. He's 15 feet into the bushes cleaning up trash, on his knees in a suit, in a tie.
Mm.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a guy with a doctorate who's well respected in the community, very well known in high school circles.
Yes.
And that was my first learning lesson of leadership at the point where, I'm about to open up a school. In that, you got to get dirty, you got to get in the muck, you got to get in the mire, and you got to roll up your sleeves, and you can't be shy about that. And so that was so he was a big one. I have another gentleman who's actually a real estate developer who's a huge philanthropist in town. I'm not going to give his last name because he would kill me. He likes to run under. His name's Tom. But just a really good guy. He's a gentleman that donates a lot to churches, a lot to grassroots organizations. And he's a big sounding board for me. So he and I talk. I try to do it every month. During the pandemic, it's been a little rough, especially because we just finished our charter petition. But I'm going to give him a call Monday and talk to him. So yeah, and then there's this priest that I go to periodically, about once or twice a year as well. One of my other mentors. So just to let you know, I have 4 or 5 mentors at any one time. Right.
Well, I mean, just listening to you, it sounds like you took the other priest's advice and definitely surrounded yourself, almost encompassed yourself with individuals that could provide you insight.
Right.
And not just, here's a check, but also, hey, have you thought about it like this? So, definitely, I mean, you've got, but I have to say this, in trying to help you out as a young Catholic boy, you need to see the priest more than once or twice a year, I think, right?
Well, I've got a group of 2 or 3 friends. One of my mentors actually just passed away a couple of years ago, and that was really painful because this guy was such a member of the community. His name was Father Henry Rodriguez, and he was very well known in South Mexico. He was a chaplain in the police department. He was a chaplain to the fire department. He used to be the pastor at St. Jude's down there by 35th and National, and he actually lived down by Z, right down the hill, right there. And so that was really rough. But I try to, my mentors are a mix. There's one person who's an educator who's Jewish, another one who is a startup guy who's Jewish, another one he's a Protestant pastor back east, another one is a Catholic priest, another one's a Catholic real estate developer. So, there's I really like to mix up thoughts and leadership practices, and I'm very ecumenical that way, I guess.
Well, if you don't make it to confession, at least you can do Shabbat with the other brothers on Sabbath, Right. So I know you got to get ready to go to another soccer game and get everything in today, and I don't want to hold you up. I just got one final question for you.
Sure.
If you could give someone advice, someone that's just trying to launch or shape their dream and they really want to get it together and get started, what would you share with them today?
The most important thing I would say is that if you have a dream, stick with it. Give it time. It's going to be a struggle. Embrace it. What seems like disappointment, what seems like closed doors, are teaching moments. And don't lose those opportunities to learn, because it's through the struggle. It's by embracing that struggle that you really grow and learn. And it doesn't matter where you are now. It doesn't matter where you are next year. The plan may be 3 years out, 5 years out, and just have patience, embrace the struggle, work through it. If it's a dream for a reason. It's been implanted in you for a reason. So, just stick with it. Just stick with it and give it all that you can. and give it a chance. Really give it a chance.
Man, I mean, hey, that is, sound sage advice, and I appreciate it. Someone out there needs to hear this and needs to know that the dream is worth it.
Right.
It's worth the work.
Right.
And so, man, I truly appreciate you being candid and open and going with the flow with the questions. And I wish your boys the best on their soccer venture. And so tell the terrible twins to not torment anybody, in the backfield or anything. So definitely,
they're having a great morning. Hey, listen, I am honored, Reverend Bruce, to be on here, and I'm looking forward to the day it'll be Reverend Dr. Bruce. That's my dream right now. That's my dream is to say that. So, but I'm honored for being here. Thank you for asking me, and my heart and prayers go out to you. I think what you're doing is fantastic.
All right, folks. That's it. You've heard from the main JD in San Diego. You've heard from David Rivera, and he offered some sage advice. So definitely tune in again. And thanks again. You guys have a good one.